So I saw I saw Shazam, and of course I was going to do a review on it. Remember, there's always different perspectives that will really determine your enjoyment of a comic book movie. I break it up in tiers. You have the tiers of normies that don't read comics at all. You have that tier of fans that don't really read comics, but they know a little bit about the primary characters due to like cartoons and live depictions. And of course you have the tier of flat out nerds like myself. The thing that makes this movie unique is that I can see where it satisfies every single tier depending on how you look at it. But let me give my thoughts on the movie itself. There will be some slight spoilers. I'm not going to give a summary like I did with the Carol Danvers movie, but the movie is good and I can see how someone can get into this movie having not ever heard about this character and they will still get some sort of enjoyment out of it. My fear was that it was going to be like overly childish, but it wasn't that at all. However, this is still a good family film. It has the comedy, it has the action, and the actors all did a pretty solid job. Remember, Billy Batson, aka Shazam, is still a kid. He just turns into an adult when he becomes who you know as, Shazam. And Zachary Levi, who is the adult version of him, does a great job of acting as if he's a kid, which can't be that easy to do. Levi isn't the only one that does a good job. The actress, the kid actress that plays Darla, who is the black foster sister of Billy, steals the show in like every scene that she's in. But my favorite character in the whole movie is Freddy Freeman, not the first baseman, the disabled new foster brother of Billy. He does a great job in being like that contrast to Billy, and they seem to work well together on screen, no matter if it was with kid Billy or the adult Billy. It was cool really seeing the roller coaster of their relationship. Now, Billy has a problem with like family, so there was that initial conflict between him and his new family. But when Billy got his powers, it brought them together because Freddy was fascinated with superheroes, which made him be of much help. But due to his arrogance, Billy that is, the newly obtained power created some tension between the two as Billy began to use his powers to basically show off, and the dynamic between those two is really a central point of this movie. And the character development of Billy is like, man, it's spot on. But I know most of you guys, you look for like my take from a comic book nerd's perspective. So let's get into the good stuff. It is important to note that I actually liked this movie, so keep this in mind and like bear with me if some of the criticisms like I have seem a little harsh. I'll bring it home, trust me. Shazam, or as most of you know him as Captain Marvel, is not one of my like favorite characters. I don't hate him, he's just not one of my favorite characters, though I do know a bit about him. He has that problem that a lot of old characters have. He's been around since like the 30s. He's been owned by different companies. Man, was brought up in different eras. So he's been put through the ringer, man. He's been retconned, and he has his highs and he has his lows where the writers were just trying to do way too much. The one thing that has remained consistent is Billy Batson is the kid. Meets a guy that gives him powers, and he goes from an adult back to a kid depending if his powers are in use. So the alias and the look as well as like his main powers are pretty consistent, though there have been some changes. But the backstory has been changed like throughout the years, man. So I didn't know which version of Shazam they were going to use. They went with the recent reincarnation, that's Flashpoint and beyond, that version of Shazam. And quite frankly, it's pretty accurate to the source material in that regards. It doesn't crap on legacy of notable heroes, which was a beef that I had with the Captain Marvel movie, considering that they did both Marvel and Monica Rambeau dirty, bro. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that, yes, man, you can make a movie and you can please the readers of comics, which that's your backbone, and you can also please the normies because you don't have to make all of these drastic like changes. No comic fan that I ever knew expected the movie to be exactly like the comics, though it wouldn't matter to the normies if they made it exactly like the comics anyway, like they do some of the animated films. Watch Flashpoint. But this pays enough respects to what already happened in the comics and is like absent of those prominent changes. Unlike Captain Marvel, which crapped on the legacy of two original heroes for the sake of shoehorning like Carol Danvers into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So let me get the negative stuff out of the way. For the record, in the current like continuity, the wizard that gives Shazam his powers isn't the same like white old wizard. of old. It's an American who is like from like the Middle East, which is why he has like that darker skin. That's the one that's depicted in the movie. The origin of Shazam, as in the god and source of his powers, is one of the more ridiculous, needless like retcons in the actual comics. Again, this happened like, after Flashpoint, aka the worst era of DC Comics, known as the New 52 era. It really irritates me when they keep going back to this, because even DC sort of recognized this gigantic mistake. That was the whole point of Convergence and Rebirth. So though the one in the movie does appear in the comics, it's not the same old classic like Captain Marvel from back in the day, back in the Gap, or even like post-Crisis on Infinite Earth. But make no mistake, the god or wizard Shazam is not like a major character. He's not going to be like headlining a whole bunch of comics or anything like that. He's simply used as the source of Billy Batson's powers. But them using the New 52 version of him isn't alone what made me like dislike that wizard. The actor just sucks as a wizard. It doesn't mean that he can't act at all, just not as that wizard. Wasn't convincing. And the whole "don't patronize me, boy" thing was like corny as hell. I have no idea why they keep recycling this guy in these comic book movies. He plays Karath in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so he's technically in both Captain Marvel movies of DC and the Captain Marvel of Marvel. Hell, he's also in Aquaman. He wasn't in the movie that long though, but when he was in it, he wasn't that good, and I would say that I disliked him the most. The other thing that I took issue with, slight issue with, is how they did Dr. Sivana. We are going to go over like some of the arc that this movie stems from, but Sivana is basically a mix between like Black Adam and Dr. Sivana in the Justice League comics that went through the origin of Billy Batson. He has the look of Sivana and the blue eye, but his power base is almost that of Black Adam, sort of, as he has his like super strength, he can fly, all of that. He's basically a mesh of Dr. Sivana and Black Adam from the Justice League books in the New 52. Now, I'm not exactly sure why they didn't just go with Black Adam, because he's Shazam's most prominent adversary. Maybe they thought it was too early to like bring him in. It seems like they revamped Sivana in order to make his powers a good clash with Shazam, because they almost mimic his. I will say that this was preferable to whatever the hell they did to Marvel in the Captain Marvel movie. They nerfed Marvel and changed him into a woman, an old ass woman, thus crapping on him to boost Carol Danvers, man. They didn't crap on Black Adam. He's not even mentioned. Now that that's out of the way, where does this movie get its arc from? Well, if you read the New 52 Justice League run, that's where it's from. Like, some of the primary events are directly out of it. The core thing that is different is what I just mentioned with Sivana and Black Adam. Black Adam doesn't appear at all in the movie like he did in the comics. Also, in the comics, Billy's parents are dead. In the movie, the mother really let him run off and never went looking for him. And his father is in prison. Nonetheless, Billy being an orphan is still the same. They did still pay attention to detail, because Billy's mother was trying to win him this toy tiger at the fair in the movie, and there's a tiger in the background of the picture that he has of his dead parents, and that tiger sort of shows up as well afterwards. Another change is how they did the 7 deadly sins and how they are depicted. They are these ghost-like monsters, and they had a lot more to them in the comics, a lot more detailed. But let's talk about everything accurate from the comics. In the movie, there are a bunch of recorded episodes where people say they have the same story, and they went to see some old wizard. These are all being facilitated and documented by Dr. Sivana. This is what happened in the comics. The difference is that instead of Sivana like experiencing the events for himself, he says that all of the documented experiences are like that of the legendary Black Adam. So Sivana is intrigued by magic because he wants to like save his family and whatnot. But Black Adam was a man that freed his enslaved nephew, right? And the nephew was summoned by the wizard. He wanted to make him champion, but the nephew said that he wanted him to save Adam, who was injured at the time when he went to go, free him. So he made both Adam and nephew his champions. And then Adam basically killed his nephew because his heart was too good and didn't want to shed any more blood. Because Adam wanted to basically go get revenge for his dead family. Sivana in the comics actually goes to find the tomb of Black Adam, which results in him getting shocked in the eye, and that's how he gets that magical sort of eye, in which he can basically see magic. But in the movie, the eye is a result of Sivana being used as a host to the 7 deadly sins when he went to the Rock of Eternity. Perhaps the most accurate portion of this movie is the depiction of Billy's new foster family. The kids look basically exactly the same, man. The family is also caring and loving like they are, in the film, though Billy does have that pushback, that initial pushback. The scene where Darla runs up to hug Billy, that happened in the comics. The scene where Billy tells Darla he's not really her brother, which makes her sad. That also happened in the comics. The only difference is that it happened at the school in the movie instead of their home like it does in the comics. The whole conflict with Billy adjusting to his new family is almost just like the comic, man. And when Billy stepped in, when Freddy was being bullied by the Briars, well, that also happened in the comic. The difference is this isn't where he took off running into the subway. Instead, he got caught fighting. He got in trouble. This is, however, what still happened, just at a different panel. Billy went to the Briar's house and then took off running into the subway, which of course transported him to the Rock of Eternity. This is when, just like the movie, he links up with the wizard who has been looking for a pure heart to give his powers to. The primary difference is that he's doing this because Black Adam is freed in the comics, and he tells Billy he has to stop him before he frees the 7 deadly sins. This is why I say they basically merged what happened with Black Adam and Dr. Sivana in the comics. Now that you understand the gist of what's going on, let me speed through the different occurrences in which this movie paid attention to the source material. This is where Billy uses his powers to mess up the Briar's car. This happened in the movie at the school. This is where Billy uses his power to save a girl who was being jacked, and then she gives him some money. This happened in the movie. Billy shocks an ATM so they can get some more money. This happened in the movie. Billy and Freddy go to a store to get some beer and then stop some robbers. This happened in the movie. Even them walking out with junk food happened. Even the Santa Claus at the mall thing happened. Again, the only difference, though it is a big one, is that he's fighting Black Adam instead of Sivana, though for a similar reason, and that's because, the other wants to beat the champion. The 5 brothers and sisters become the Shazam kids and start fighting the 7 deadly sins. Well, that happened in the comics. The setting is different though, and their powers end up sort of wearing off in the comics as it's only momentary, but hey, it happened. Even the mid-credit scene where Mr. Mind shows up randomly happened in the comics. Again, it's just a different setting. Now, before I give my final takeaway, it's again important to note that this is the new 52 retcon version of these characters. Freddy is not necessarily Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary isn't the twin sister of Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel. She's the adoptive sister this go around. So while this isn't my preferable version of Captain Marvel, do not get it twisted, aka Shazam. This is not the fault of the directors or actors or even the film producers. They all played their roles and created a movie that was largely based on what happened in the comics. So they show love to the source material. I hate to keep going back to Captain Marvel, but this movie did what the fools that despised my review said just couldn't happen. Like I've said, bro, though you fools try to straw man, nobody has ever said that it has to be exactly like the comics. But you gotta at least show some love and a reference. Shazam actually made, changes, but the main arc is still intact. My biggest beef with the Captain Marvel movie with Carol Danvers, aside from the obvious shoehorn, was that they crapped on both the legacy of Monica Rambeau and Marvel, 2 original heroes. They didn't do to Black Adam what Captain Marvel did to them. When people said, would I have rather had like Monica not even been in the movie? You damn right. I would have rather her not been mentioned instead of her being knocked down to a damn child that looks up to lousy ass Carol Danvers. Black Adam, on the other hand, did not have to have his legacy like crapped on in order for Sivana to exist. Plus, he's a classic character. Granted, they buffed him up and he's like way too powerful. They didn't have to sacrifice Adam in the process. So this movie isn't perfect. No movie is. I have my gripes, as I already expressed, but this movie seems to be a movie in which the creators actually did their homework. So if you watch it as a normie, you can enjoy it. And if you watch it as a comic book fan, you can respect it at the very least. It's not a difficult thing to do. Y'all fools are just mad that Danvers' movie missed the mark in that regards and somebody called it out. Y'all were grasping for straws to try to make it appear as if I had like some outrageous expectations. So Carol Danvers and Billy Batson's movies were released about a month apart. And Billy Batson is the superior Captain Marvel.